In other words, it's logic that you manufactured. It's the way in which you are conveying your message. And so let me give you an example of this, right? So and this is totally made up, but let's say that this was real. Most car mechanics are cigarette smokers. And this is ridiculous. I'm giving you a ridiculous example to start with just so that you can really see this. But most car mechanics are cigarette smokers. Cigarette smokers die young. Therefore, if you don't want to die young, you won't become a car mechanic. Right? Now, like, it's ridiculous, this example, because it's clearly a flaw, right? In logic, it's clearly, it's a goof. I wrote this as a goof for you. But what you can see is that this is manufactured logic. So let me show you another example. So this one says, and this one is legitimately one that could be used, right? So struggling marketers don't segment their email lists. The most successful marketers use extensive list segmentation. Therefore, if you want to become a successful marketer, you need to learn how to properly segment your email list. Right? Struggling marketers don't segment their email lists. Now, let me take a step back and explain something to you. That each of these statements on their own could be true. But when presented like this, it's being presented in a way that this becomes the accepted conclusion of this prior stuff. So struggling marketers don't segment their email lists. That's true. The most successful marketers use extensive list segmentation. That's true. If you want to become a successful marketer, you need to learn how to properly segment your email list. That's true. What makes this manufactured logic is by adding in this word therefore. Therefore, what's followed after this, the message is that because of this, this is true. Well, let me show you something, and I'm going to show you this in another context as well. That this is not necessarily, the thing that I want you to get is that all these are true, but the fact that the most successful marketers use extensive list segmentation in no way means that the extensive list segmentation that they are using was responsible for them becoming successful. Maybe all these people became successful and then started using extensive list segmentation. Or maybe they were using the extensive list segmentation and it had nothing to do with them becoming successful. But the way it's presented in here is this is manufactured logic, right? And so let me give you another example of this. This is another example of manufacturing logic. And again, this is totally made up. Over 83% of the people who live to 90 years plus eat more than 6 servings of vegetables a day. The majority of people who pass on before the age of 60 eat less than 3 servings per day. Therefore, if you want to extend your lifespan, you must be on a meal plan high in vegetables. Right? So let me show you something. So I could use this manufactured logic if I was selling a program on how to segment your list. I could use this as manufactured logic if I was selling a meal plan or a diet that was based on high vegetables or vegetarian diet. And of course, I could have made this whatever I want. I could say, therefore, if you want to extend your lifespan, you must consume more vegetables, or you must be sure to get all of the common nutrients found in vegetables. Well, that's not necessarily the case. This is manufactured logic because, look, what I want you to understand is that this might be true. Let's say it is, that over 83% of the people who live to 90 years plus eat more than 6 servings of vegetables per day. But that might have nothing to do with it. That doesn't mean that this is responsible for why they live to this age. That could legitimately be just a coincidence. Right? It's like saying, over 83% of the people who live to 90 years plus live in Florida. and the majority of people, therefore, if you want to extend your lifespan, you need to live in a warm climate or something like that. Well, that might not mean anything. Those people could have moved to Florida at 75 years old or moved to a warm climate at 75 years old. But what we're doing is we are constructing a message that is implying that these things prove this. And again, it's this use of the word therefore. And we could replace this word with, what that means for you, or what that means is that, if you want to. By saying therefore or what that means, we are saying and implying that this proves this. And so this is the kind of thing that you can be aware of this. And you should be aware of this. You should certainly be using this when appropriate. And this isn't a lie, but it's not necessarily the case. And you're going to understand a deeper psychological trigger in just a bit where you can really see this at play. But, you should be using this in your email when needed, right? Because this, right, when we say that, you should be on a meal plan high in vegetables, this is serving as a proof point. It's manufactured logic. It's manufactured, but it is serving as a proof point for this claim over here. And be aware of this, because you will see this type of manufactured logic where, if you really look at it in the world, in advertising, in marketing, in general, even on the news, where it's not necessarily, that, they're doing this like, it can almost be flawed logic, but the point is it's manufactured, right? And so we're using legitimate points. I made these up just for you, but we're using legitimate points to convey this message that is plausible, but it becomes accepted as a fact. This is not questioned. This, therefore, what comes after. And so that is trigger number 4. Trigger number 5 is something that I first learned from Clayton Makepeace. And this is a way of articulating your product or service features and benefits on a deeper level. And this is the FAB formula. FAB stands for features, advantages, and benefits. And so an FAB statement, a feature, advantage, benefit statement, it explains the feature. It tells what the feature is. It tells what that feature does, right? Which is the advantage. What that feature does is the advantage, and then how it benefits the prospect. Features, of course, as hopefully each and every one of you know, features are facts, characteristics, aspects about your product or service, right? It's not about the prospect. It's about your product or service. When you're talking about a facet of your product or service, you're talking about a feature. An advantage, like I said, is what the feature does. And then, of course, the benefit tells the prospect why they should value that advantage. In other words, what is the benefit exactly, right? What is the benefit of that advantage? It's what connects the facts about your product to the solution that your prospect is looking for. So here's kind of how this works, and then I'll give you an example. It works that, because your product has X feature, you'll be able to do Y. And what that means for you is A, right? Or ABC. And so because it has this, you'll be able to advantage. And what that means for you is this. So we could say, for example, because it has a word-for-word transcript, you will be able to read and reread and reference back over the material as often as you want. You see, now that's where the average marketer stops. The average marketer really thinks that the advantage is the benefit? Now, those of you that have gone through the MFA program, those of you that are MTAM members, those of you that have gone through any of my trainings, you have heard me talk about many times before the benefit of the benefit. You'll hear me on, consult Q&A calls talking about what is the benefit of that. Because oftentimes what marketers think is the benefit is not really the benefit. For instance, a marketer might say, because it has a word-for-word transcript, you'll be able to go back, reference through it, go through it anytime you want at your own convenience. Well, that's not the benefit, right? And so that is the advantage. And what that means for you, right, is that you're only 1 second away from getting your answer, or, we would spell out what that advantage does for the prospect. And so here are just some questions for you to get you really thinking about the advantage. Why might the feature be advantageous? What does it mean for him or her, the prospect? What does it offer, and why might he like it, right? So again, because it has the feature, you'll be able to do the advantage, and what that means for you is benefit. Here is an example from Kevin Clark, right? And so our sleeping bags have a 1-inch layer of insulation. This helps to retain body heat on cold nights. You'll be warm all night, which means that you'll get great sleep and be well rested for a day of fun activities that you'll fully enjoy. So what you can see here is that our sleeping bags have a 1-inch layer of insulation on them. That's the feature. The advantage is that this helps to retain body heat on cold nights. So you'll be warm all night. What is the benefit? The benefit is you'll get, right, which means that you'll get a great sleep. You'll get great sleep and be well rested for a day of fun activities that you'll fully enjoy. That is feature, advantage, benefit right there. Feature, advantage, benefit. Number 6. This one is also awesome. This is what I call the faux science tactic. And the faux science tactic is really kind of very similar to what we previously talked about. It's almost like it's what is sometimes referred to as false evidence. And so let me give you an example of how this works. So 6 out of 10 best-selling books are, and this is made up, 6 out of 10 best-selling books are published by a major publishing house. 67% of all tennis pros use an oversized Prince racket. More doctors recommend Tylenol than any other brand, and motorcycle accidents accounted for less than 1/10 the fatalities of automobile accidents. So let me show you what's going on here and how powerful this really is. So what does this imply, right? So when I say 6 out of 10, so let's say I would use something like this. If this was true, right, I'd get the actual number. 6 out of 10 best-selling books are published by a major publishing house. So if I was a major publishing house, or I was marketing a major publishing house, this is the type of tidbit that I would use. This is the type of faux science or, false evidence that I would use. Because what does this convey? This conveys that if you want to increase your chances of having a best-selling book, then you want to get your book published by a major publishing house. But that's not necessarily true. That is not necessarily true at all. Those best-selling authors, they might have just chosen to have their book published by a major publishing house. In other words, this faux science is conveying this idea that, look, 6 out of 10 best-selling books are published by a major publishing house. So if you want to increase your chances of having a best-selling book, you want to have it published by a major publishing house. But that's not necessarily the case. Those books could have been bestsellers if they were published under any company, right? This may just mean that the best authors migrate towards major publishing houses. But if those books were published under any author, under any publisher, they might have been bestsellers. See, so this is not, what it conveys is not actually accurate, or what is accepted by the prospect is not legitimately necessarily the case. It could be, but it's like, in other words, if we wanted to say, like, I might have no proof whatsoever that if you get your book published by a major publisher, that it will increase your chances of being a bestseller. But this little tidbit over here certainly conveys that, even though that's not necessarily the case. Just like over here, 67% of all tennis pros use an oversized Prince racket. So let's say I was selling Prince rackets. This would be the kind of tidbit that I use, right? Does this necessarily mean that if you use a Prince racket that it will increase your chances of becoming a tennis pro? No. Maybe tennis pros switched to a Prince after they became pros, or maybe these pros are simply paid by Prince to use their rackets. But it certainly has an implication over here that it is that it's this factual argument, just like this. And this one is the best. And this is when I first saw this years ago, this is when I really became aware of this whole concept of, faux science, of false evidence, right? And so you see this used, right? More doctors recommend Tylenol than any other brand, or more doctors recommend Tylenol than any other painkiller. And so what it conveys is that, well, wow, it's got to be good, right? It's got to be good. Doctors love it. They wouldn't be recommending it to all their patients if